Robinson, journalist, local journalist. How's it going, Heather?
Great, guys. Thank you.
Great. And our special guest is Captain John Cox, who will be joining us to weigh in on some of the recent occurrences that have been taking place here in the city. One of the things I want to start off with is not just in the city, but around the country. I don't know if you guys saw Joe Biden's presser today or not. I thought it was rather interesting. Definitely low energy. And I don't know. I don't know what's up with this guy. What do you say?
Yeah, it was interesting how he refused to answer questions from a lot of journalists. Like Peter Doocy, I seen, said he had a folder full of questions and Biden didn't call on him. I'm convinced that this press conference, all the questions were screened and prearranged. They're really keeping a close eye on Biden, making sure that he's not going off the rails and saying anything crazy or anything to make him sound bad. It seems like his handlers are really guarding him, just like they did before the election when he didn't even bother to campaign. It just seems to be a continue of that.
Yeah, and I thought that was interesting also because throughout the presser, he was referring back to notes. And it seemed as if though they're trying to make this as if though it's commonplace, that that's what leaders do, typical of this administration. But I'm like, no, that isn't typical. Well, I've got my numbers here. He should be able to see those numbers off the top of his head. And there were many instances whereby he seemed as if though he was confused. And the questions that were being put to him, yes, they were rehearsed because he was looking down, reading the answers. But you think back to when Trump was the president, just to be fair, they were attacking him. Well, you're the meanest person out there. Is this a reason why these people are saying this? Whereas for Biden, well, maybe the immigrants are coming because you're nice and you're kind. I'm thinking, are you serious? This is a leader of the free world. He should be able to take those questions without stumbling and fumbling. But it seems as if though this is where we are now. They want to cover for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Clearly, go ahead, John. Go ahead.
He's still the news conference, even the little short things that we see on a day-to-day basis, his little interview the other day, everything he is doing is emotion, feel-good emotion. There were so many questions today that he dodged. There was no doubt about the questions were rehearsed. He had a list of who he was going to call on. He knew what those questions were. Now, granted, there were some follow-up questions, but those follow-up questions from a very friendly media were pretty softball questions. And his answers, when they did push back a little bit, he always reverted back to the same thing that he did when he was running, and that was, come on, man. and that's his escape mechanism. Come on, man. And then he wants to go somewhere else.
That and blame Trump.
Yeah.
Which old habits die hard, I guess. I thought that one good thing was one of the reporters asked him a decent question about whether his policies are incentivizing people to send and use children to cross this border. I thought she should have gone even further and asked if these policies are incentivizing traffickers and commercial sexual exploitation of children, because my understanding is that they are. But he didn't address it. He just blamed Donald Trump. It was ridiculous. And right. He also, yes, good point. The come on, man, and I should take it as a compliment that I'm such a nice guy. I thought it was an embarrassment. I would say he's Jimmy Carter 2.0, but I honestly think that's an insult to Jimmy Carter, who, weak though he was, I don't think was the bumbler that Biden is. He's weak, On the other hand, I hope he hangs in, because if he doesn't, then we've got the hard left in charge, which we probably already have, let's face it. But it was just, an embarrassment.
I think at some point, Joe has got to accept the fact that, as they say, he's now the president. He can stop blaming Donald Trump for his inability to make things work. He owns the border crisis now. He owns it. The same way when Trump came in and was elected in 2016, and then when he took office 2017, I'm like, okay, you can't blame Obama anymore. It's yours. If the market tanks, which everyone was hoping that it did, you own it, but it didn't tank. Okay, so now Joe Biden has to own the entire Mexico fiasco at the border. They can stop saying, oh, well, my predecessor. Well, your predecessor stopped. He put up a wall. Okay, a wall that you said stop building. And now you want to take these children and fly them across America and put them in army camps or what have you. That's just not acceptable. I mean, we are a generous country, but we should not be encouraging immigrants, or whatever you want to call them, to send their children here unprotected. And for what? This has to stop. It's inhumane. Children are trekking this dangerous journey. Some are being raped, some are being exploited. The media won't share this. And then you have this journalist, if she calls herself a journalist, Yamiche Alcindor, who's, well, you're nice, the kids coming because of this and their parents. No, it's because he's weak. I hate to say it, but he's weak. And he should come out and he should say, stop coming, the borders are closed. This is inhumane. We can't have these children coming here without adult supervision. Obama
actually said it. I don't know how well Obama managed it, but even Obama said that. I remember seeing a tape of him saying,
yes, it's up on the site. Yes.
Please stop it. Stop sending children, because we have to send them back. In the worst case scenario, they're not going to make it here alive. You have to stop. I mean,
right. And the thing that's even more devastating is that when you think about it, when children are here in the United States and they're abused, what happens? We remove them from the parent. So the same thing will happen in this instance. We don't know if the parent or the adult that brought the kid here is a parent or not. So they have to be removed.
My understanding is that's part of why they were separating families. I mean, that policy was very controversial, and I get why people objected. But my understanding, what I heard from sources, and I don't know why this wasn't discussed more, but that one of the concerns was that there were men showing up with a bunch of usually young girls who looked suspicious to our border agents, and they would say, well, these are my daughters. But you have, the civil liberties people and everything else. You can't start taking blood from people. There was no way to know, are these the actual parents or are these traffickers? That and also disincentivizing the use of children that was some of the thinking behind the separating families. Some of them weren't actually families. They were people grabbing kids, using kids to get across the border.
Right. And that's really disingenuous to say that, okay, we want the civil liberty. To take out, it's a violation, is this. But look, don't do it. This kid is with someone, an adult, who's possibly abusing them, who's possibly exploiting them. So what else would you have us do?
It's just impossible. Yeah, I mean, it's very sad. These people, I'm sure there's a lot of hardship and suffering. I don't mean to dismiss that for a second.
Oh, absolutely not.
But, we can't solve everyone in the world's problems. We just simply cannot. And somebody needs to stand up for healthy boundaries. Any therapist will tell you, on an individual level, you can try to help. You should try to help people, but you can't enable dysfunction. That's not actually helping the person.
Right.
It's like, if you say yes, yes, yes to everything, in the end, you wind up hurting people.
Right.
And it's a very simple principle that I think applies, in many situations. And someone needs to just articulate this. I think that our former President Trump, I don't know how well he articulated it. I mean, he certainly did a good job. He tried to put policies in place that were healthier. And he did. But now it's all being reversed.
Mhm.
Now, one of the things that's just terrible is that we don't have a media right now that will call and hold him accountable. Nobody wants to fact check anything he says. So he just goes through and just talks about anything, makes up numbers. This number that he talked about today, 87% of the people coming in are being sent back. That's completely a lie. 13% are being sent back. The other 87% are being housed or just catch and release and just being spread all over. They're getting airplane tickets, bus tickets. They're being given checks and money to leave and go other places. So he lies and lies and lies, not only on this, but many other issues also, but nobody will call him out. And we don't have a media that will keep these people honest, and it's really, really a shame. Years ago, and I think I told you guys a story of my grandparents and my mom and everything being deported to Mexico in 1929. I don't know if I told you that. When they got here to this country, they came in through Ellis Island. They came in legally. They filled out all their papers, and were going to get their citizenship and all that. Well, there was something wrong with my grandmother's papers. So the entire family, cousins, uncles, my mother, everybody had to go to Mexico, and they were there for 3 to 5 years in waiting to come back again through the right methods. And I asked my mom one day, because my mother was born here in the United States, so she was a citizen. And I asked her one day, I said, how do you feel, Mom, about having to leave this country and being sent to Mexico and deported when you were already an American citizen? And her answer was actually pretty brilliant. She goes, well, what did you want me to do? I was 2 years old. I had to go with my parents. Mm-hmm. I said, do you feel any resentment? She goes, no, not really. We had to come into this country legally. That's what my grandmother and your grandmother and your grandfather said. We're coming into the country legally. This is part of what we have to do. Once we get everything done, we'll come back. And 3 to 5 years later, they did. And so what's going on at the border is such a slap in the face to all of the people that have come into this country legally. And it's just unfortunate. And you can be compassionate with a situation that we find a lot of people are in this world, but we can't solve it ourselves. And if we try to do the shortcuts, we're really being unfair to the people that have tried to do it right.
Mm-hmm. Right. I agree. Go ahead, Andrew.
I think so many people in this country are uneducated on the issues with this crisis at the border. We've had on Angel Mom Agnes Gibney, who talked about how the 3-time deported illegal alien ended up killing her son, the MS-13 gang problems that they bring. And Captain Cox, you had an interesting point the other day about how they're actually affecting people in the construction industry and hurting the wages down there in Southern California. You live state. Can you tell us a little bit about how this illegal alien crisis is hurting workers in Southern California?
Well, in 1971, in Orange County is a pretty conservative area, and it's kind of about 22 miles from Los Angeles, or actually about 50 miles from Los Angeles. So in the construction industry down here, most of which was residential housing, almost all the trades were, I guess for no other word, is just they were white people. All the masons were either Irish or Italian descent, first and second generation were all the masons. All the plasterers were first generation Mexican Americans. The drywallers were different ethnic groups, but mostly all white. And that was how it was up until about probably 89 or 1990. Then suddenly, trade after trade after trade started disappearing. They first hit the drywall industry, and they started cutting the prices and bidding the jobs cheaper than the guys that were legitimate contractors. These were people that didn't have, they were all illegals. They didn't have a contractor's license. They didn't take care, they didn't have workman's comp. They didn't have liability insurance. And they came in undercut, and unfortunately, unscrupulous builders took the low price. And it took about 3 to 5 years. The entire drywall industry changed. As soon as the drywall industry became all either illegal and mostly illegal, suddenly the price of drywall went up because they had a monopoly and they didn't care. They just started jacking the price up. It started happening in every trade. You can't do a swimming pool in California today and find the guy maybe that's the pool contractor might be white. All the other trades are Mexican. Most are not licensed. Most are illegal. They're working for lesser wages. They've really depressed wages. The way the state has tried to counteract some of this is the workman comp claims are completely out of control. When I give my guys a raise, every year they get a $2 an hour raise, whether they're a carpenter, a laborer, a mason, or whatever. And they don't ask me for a raise. I don't offer a raise. We're mandated to give them a raise based on the insurance, unemployment, or workman's comp. And so every year, my guys are getting $2 an hour raise. They went from 28 to 30 to 32. Now they're at 36. That's in a period of about 4 years. They just like it a lot, but it's because the state is trying to, the state's trying to think that if they have qualified, more trained people, the injury rate is going to go down. Well, it doesn't. So it's really affected everything. And now there's a whole bunch of people that should be in construction and they don't have jobs anymore. And it's too bad.
Yeah, it is too bad, Captain. Something else I'd like to talk about is Joe Biden is talking about unveiling his $3 trillion Build Back Better plan in Pittsburgh next week. It's going to focus on infrastructure. It's a plan to include spending on clean energy, infrastructure, broadband, rail and bridges, and electric vehicle charging stations. So apparently this is a lot of windmills and other things for the climate, and they're going to use it under the infrastructure guise. Rob, did you see this plan, and what are your thoughts on Joe Biden's Build Back Better $3 trillion plan?
Well, I missed that, but one of the things I will say, I don't think his plans are well thought out. I think that whoever he's talking to, they're not putting America first, because a lot of these policies are going to end up hurting Americans. Mm-hmm. As we said in the previous segment, the whole thing with the minimum wage, increasing the minimum wage, $15 an hour. Next thing you know, $20 an hour. And I've always said that jobs like Walmart are starter jobs for a lot of kids. You can't expect to go to Walmart and work there as a stock clerk and make $50 an hour and drive a BMW. But for some reason, the whole reality TV is telling these kids that this is the way it's supposed to be. Kids are looking at Instagram. They're looking at all these stars, influencers that are driving BMWs and they're marketing all these products. So they're thinking that should be me. So I want to work at McDonald's and I want to make $20 or $30 an hour, and I want to drive a Porsche, and I want to have designer clothes. That's just not going to happen. And when you have government officials that are stepping in, trying to force businesses to increase minimum wages, and a lot of these other crazy policies that you mentioned, Andrew, is not well thought out. Mm-hmm. And it's a recipe for disaster. And I think we said this on Sunday. Is that what they want? Do they want the country to be destroyed? I mean, we started out talking about illegal immigrants coming over, illegal aliens. We're not heartless. We're not without feelings. But what about Americans? What about taking care of home first? Well, we want to protect these kids. They're coming here this long trek because of the violence in their country. What about the violence in Chicago? What about the violence in South Central LA? What about the violence in Baltimore? What about those Black kids? Who is going to defend them? Who's going to rescue them from the violence? You don't hear about the violence in Chicago right now. Every weekend, people are being killed in some of the roughest neighborhoods in America. And now you want to introduce another segment of the population to the same thing? It's just not fair. We've got to look at our own children and protect our kids. Look at our kids. They're not in school, but look at the kids that are coming across the border. Look at what they're getting. It's not fair. So when 45, Trump was saying America first, that's what he was talking about. He wasn't saying it in some like racist way, the way the media is positioning it. It's just wrong because they see Black kids that are suffering. Since you want to focus on, race, look at those kids that are suffering in the inner cities. Who's going to take care of them first? We're going to bring someone on our show next week, a gentleman who has opened up a school for our Black youths. He's only 21 years old. We want to hear his story.
Wow.
But we have got to help ourselves before we can try to help others.
And I question whether we're even helping others. I mean, how many of these poor children, like President Obama said, don't even make it here, die in the Rio Grande, die, God only knows what's happening as far as the trafficking. One thing I know a little bit about, having reported on some commercial sexual exploitation here in New York, is that there's a lot of it, even in our country, and any child, especially little girls, but little boys too sometimes, that grows up in the system, even here, foster care, there is never a shortage of adults willing and eager to prey on an unaccompanied child. Mm-hmm. I mean, these children who are coming unaccompanied, I shudder to think what has happened to them. The point is, once they're here, of course, we want our facilities to be humane and we want to do our best for them. But to do anything that incentivizes children to wander alone, I seriously question whether that is helping children. And I don't say that lightly, because I'm sure conditions are terrible where they are, or they wouldn't be doing this. But do we honestly believe children unaccompanied are not being hurt, are not being preyed on? We really flatter ourselves that this is our humanitarianism. We're helping them to somehow encourage that. That really incenses me. Right, and I think it's a lot of liberal self-congratulation and narcissism so they can feel like they're the good people and the humane people. But they're not digging into the issues. They don't understand how frequently children are preyed upon. They don't understand what's going on with the trafficking. So they can just feel good about objecting to children being separated from their parents, which is sad. But there are worse things that happen to children in this world every day than that. Right. And we, as a country, should not be in any way incentivizing that.
One of the, you can kind of say this about lots of things in life, but you can really say this about the illegal aliens and the illegals coming up from mostly from Mexico and the countries Ecuador or the Guatemala and that group of countries down there. In a way, you can almost say this: it's about the money. You got business here in this state, in this country, that wants the cheap labor.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the governments down there sending people up here to get the remittance money to send back there. What you find about, and what they do is they bring their culture here. They bring their rules, their livelihood, their how they've grown up. There's a lot of crime that's coming up here. A lot of the people are great people, but there's a lot of bad people coming up too. And even the good people, when they get here, they try to do the best they can, but based on where they have to live or they might end up, they're in these inner cities and things just get bad. So they have to turn to crime and drugs and so forth. The first generation kids are a real problem. We have so many that work in my restaurant, and the parents are such dear friends of mine, the greatest people in the world. And their first generation kids aren't too bad, but their second generation kids or their second and third kid, holy cow, they're just anti-United States. They've been indoctrinated. They hate everything. They get into gangs. One of the things that I had 4 brothers working for me. Each one of them was making about $42 an hour. They were all illegal, but it was a small company that I started for them. I had met these guys on one of my jobs, and I walked up to them and I said, "You guys really do nice work. Do you have a company card?" I said, "I'd like to maybe start using you on some of my projects." And they didn't. And I found out that all of them, there was about 14 of them, were all illegal. However, they all had Social Security numbers, but they weren't theirs. They were illegal Social Security numbers. And they had Social Security numbers and this and that. And I wanted to use them. So I said, "Guys, I'm going to start a new company, but we're going to do this legal. You're going to get payroll. You're going to pay taxes. I will fill out the forms to get you guys through the system to try to make you citizens. I will try to do what I can to get you guys green cards." So for 3 years, I didn't take one bit of profit through the company. And I was paying these guys great wages because they were great workers and their quality of work was tremendous. But I was really starting to get disappointed. I was at the market one day and 2 of the brothers' wives were there. And now these guys, the ladies had their own house cleaning companies. And between the husband and the ladies of the wives, they were making about close to $200,000 a year. And I'm standing behind them. They didn't know who I was or didn't recognize me. And the food stamps came out and the welfare stuff came out. I go, "How can that be?" And then I talked to one of the kids that works at my restaurant. And I said, "How is it that Angel and his wife, the money they make, they have food stamps?" And they told me, they said, "Well, because in Mexico, the wives don't go by the husband's name. They carry the original name of the wife. So the papers here in California can't track the double dipping and getting all the freebies. So they're making good wages. They're getting a lot of benefits that none of us get. They're taking the jobs from, unfortunately, a group of people that don't understand it. And that's our Black African-American community has been devastated by the illegals coming in and taking all the jobs that many of those kids in the inner city could be doing or be trained to do. And it's a vicious, vicious circle. And then they send about probably 50%, well, probably about 30% of their money back to their home country.
Right.
And they're almost even though I was doing it legally and I was taking taxes out, many of them were all working for cash. And I think, Andrew, I told you the other day, they formed their own union. In town. You can, homeowners will go down to the location that all these guys congregate in on a Saturday or a Sunday, and they'll drive their car up and say, I need a couple laborers. And if any of those laborers get in a car and go to work and they work for under $20 an hour, when they come back, they get beaten up by the rest of the group because they have formed their own union and nobody's going to work for less than $20 an hour. They learn quick.
I see that, raping the system. And what do we get? Again, we have to wake up. America has to do better. It's not that we're unsympathetic. We are concerned, but we have got to tighten up our laws. We don't need to create new laws. We've got to tighten up the laws that we have. Now,
enforce the law.
And exactly, enforce
as
the laws
humanely as possible, yes, and not encourage, not incentivize people to use children or send children alone to get in here. It's terrible policy, terrible. Like so much, of this liberal policy. Maybe it's well intentioned, but clearly there are horrible unintended consequences. I don't know how this isn't obvious. I just don't get it,
Right. I mean, you would think that any rational-minded person would see this and say, wait, this has to stop. We can't continue along those lines because eventually we're not going to have any more to give. You have Joe looking at another package, $1 trillion package, just like give. At what point will he wake up and say, wait, this has got to stop?
I don't think he's going to wake up.
Honestly, I think in terms of the humanitarian side, I know you guys probably wouldn't agree with this, and I'm not advocating this, but I mean a purely libertarian position would be just open the border. Just stop playing these games. If we're not going to enforce the law, then let the market decide. As it is now, people who are coming with children are brought in, people who are coming alone to work. My understanding is they're being sent back. So what this is incentivizing is all kinds of criminality. It's worse than open borders, in my humble opinion. I mean, I'm not going to weigh in on the economics. I understand there's concern for our citizens, and you guys are totally on point with that. I'm just saying from a human side, I think the policies now incentivize crime, use of children, sending children alone, all in the name of compassion for children. Basically, you have better odds of getting into this country if you come with a child. So,
yeah,
what is that? What is that spawning in terms of we're naive if we think this. There's all kinds of criminal behavior in the world, and there's people who are going to take advantage, and that's what's happening. I think we'd almost be better off just saying, okay, let's just open the border, and when there's no more jobs, people will stop coming, but why are we keeping up this facade? We're either going to maintain a border as humanely as we can, but firmly, or, these laws that are just encouraging people to grab a kid and come across or to send their kids alone. It's insane. I mean,
I would be willing to open the border. I'd be willing to open the border if we then could go across to Mexico and get a job, run for governor, run for mayor, run for city council down there.
And we know that will never happen, but it can happen the other way.
If you read
a terrible country, it only works the other way.
Right. Yeah. Well, and the other thing that I want to mention is that, like you say, it's at some point we have to wake up and realize that this is not sustainable and that we are destroying our country. And a country without borders is not a country.
It's not a country.
And I don't care how many times people say, well, you're mean, you're this, you're that. No, we have to protect our borders. We have to protect the border walls, and people just can't
Okay.
come in. But one point that I wanted to make, I just lost my train of thought, is that why won't someone look into who is giving these individuals money to make this long trek? Who's providing them with the Joe Biden t-shirt saying, "Let me in"? That's important. We need to know that. And we need to call out the American who's doing it. If it's George Soros, he has to be called out. We can't just sit idly by and see this, what he's doing, because he's creating part of the problem. He is the problem. If he's funding and telling these kids, to come here, and then he's provided them with food and shelter along the way, they have cell phones, he is part of the problem. And it has to stop. And if we have to take away his citizenship and send him to no man's land, then we should do it. Because he's showing to us that he does not care for this country. The man is almost 90 years old. He'll be dead soon. But by the time he's dead, the damage that he would have caused upon this country would be irreparable. So he and others like him should be called out. We can't just sit there, the big elephant in the room, and we see these people on TV with the t-shirts on. They're just not appearing, by osmosis, and they're wearing the shirts. Someone is providing them with it. Someone is encouraging this, other than Joe Biden saying, "Come, come, come." Someone else is doing it, and I want to know who the person is.
Well, there's no doubt it's being orchestrated. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, guys, we're at I think like 45 minutes in. That's all I have. But I definitely wanted to mention that, there is a crisis at the border, and it needs to be looked at, and it's inhumane. We are not without sympathy. We are not without feelings. We're not cold-hearted, but we're concerned for those kids that are here without adult supervision, without their parents, and they've probably been kidnapped. And God knows the type of life that they're going to encounter when they're let loose here to go willy-nilly around. Someone's going to take them, someone is going to abuse them, someone is going to have them in their house as a slave. This has to stop. It looks good, from the left. Oh, we're letting these people in and they'll be able to vote Democrat. No, it's more than just that. It's more than that. And I think as humans, as Americans, we should all be concerned. That's all I have. That's all I have to say. That we should all be concerned. And it's more than just letting these kids come across. And then we're going to put them up in a military base while our kids are suffering. And where's Dr. Fauci talking about, the COVID spread? Where is he? Where is he now? Why isn't he coming out saying this is dangerous? Because no one is testing these individuals. We don't know what they're doing there. We don't even know what vaccination shots that they take. Not just the COVID. We don't know anything about these individuals that are coming, other than the fact that they are coming here illegally. And I think that we're doing them a disservice also. And it's really unfortunate.
The latest word that came out today, and I don't know exactly where this came from, but somebody from the inside said that 10% of the kids coming over have been tested, and they have a 10% positive COVID rate. 10%.
See, that's a
a lot.
disservice to those kids. It is a disservice to the kids, because now what about the treatment? Then they're going to come and then they're going to infect someone else, and then we will have another strain of the virus. Where is Dr. Fauci? Where is Biden on that? Quiet as is kept. No reporter will ask him anything about that. And if they do, they'll probably let's blame Donald Trump. No, we can't blame him. It's time to blame Biden and Kamala. But she's supporting some commission to resolve this. Well, first we need to start with making certain that those kids don't come here untested, okay? And they should be told stay at home, because this is not good. But we know that won't happen. So
yeah, it's just further proof that the Democrats will do everything for power, letting the illegals in, wanting to make 11 million of them, give them pathways to citizenships, and then change the voting demographics. They want to end the filibuster. They want to change the voting laws.
Because the filibuster is now racist.
Yeah, they want trying to change the voting laws that we've had for decades. It's just absolute power grab and control for them right now.
It is.
Well, it's unbelievable that, hey, but this is a country we live in. We've just got to stay the course and make certain that we, the next election, we've got to make certain that our vote counts. So again, I want to thank you guys for staying with us for the second half of our show tonight. We definitely want to thank the captain for coming on. He's been a valuable resource to explain the restaurant industry and then to weigh in on the political side as well. So we thank you. We will definitely have him back. So stay tuned for having the captain back and to give his insight on politics and other hot topics that take place in the world today. Heather, closing statement?
Well, let's just try to be as clear and firm as we can in our positions, and understand that sometimes it is kinder and more humane to have boundaries.
Right. Captain?
I'd just like to thank you guys again for inviting me, and it was great. And give me a call again as soon as you're ready, and I'll be probably glad to come back.
Absolutely. Andrew, close us out.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We will be back on Sunday. I hope everyone has a great weekend. Thank you to Eddie and Captain Cox for coming on tonight. Had a great time talking with them. And thank you, Heather, for coming on, as always. We will see you guys on Sunday.
And our Sunday, our guest will be Michael Chemolgi, and he will be talking about the state of law enforcement and this defund the police atmosphere. So thank you all. God bless.